Hello everyone, welcome back. Hi Hazik bhai, welcome. How are you? Here is your beautiful name. I am good, how about you? Thank you so much for joining. Oh, good to hear. Good afternoon. Comments a beautiful name. Hi dear Khadija, how are you? Walaikum assalam. Here is yours. I am good. How about you, dear Khadija? Thank you so much for joining. Here is yours. Hi, Asad. How are you? Hi, dear Lena. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Faiha. Here is yours. Fatima. Hi, welcome back. How are you? It is a good name. Hello, dear Tirana. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Kyrie. Here is yours. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. Hello, dear Sonika. Here is your good name. I miss you too. Hi, dear Amor. How are you? Hello, dear Riley. Here is your beautiful name. Hello, dear Short Leg. Here is yours. What a unique name you have. Hi, dear Dhanvi. Here is your beautiful name. Hello, dear Ali. Here is yours. Hi, dear Mantasha. Here is your beautiful name. Mantasha. How are you? Hey, dear Adam. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Fateh. Here is yours. Hello, dear Mia. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Aish. Here is yours. What a cool name you have, dear Aish. Hi, dear Aisha. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Samir. Here is yours. Yes, I'm alright. Hi, dear Q1. Here is your good name. Hello. Okay, bye. Dear Eliha, here is yours. Take care. Hi, dear Julie. Here is your good name. Let me rewrite. Julie, here is yours. Thank you so much for joining. Hi, dear Rumen. Here is your good name. Nay. Hi, dear Sri. Here is yours. Hello, dear Jimmy. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Molish. Here is yours. What a unique name you have, dear Molish. Hi, dear Daksha. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Poor. Here is yours. Hello, dear Adya. Here is your good name. Hello, dear Ritesh. Here is yours. Hello, dear Yuvan. Here is your good name. Welcome back. Hi, dear DJ. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Leah. Here is yours. Hi, dear Akshat. Here is your good name. Hello, dear Sadia. Here is yours. Thank you for joining. Hi, dear Saidu. Here is your good name. Hello, dear Zella. Here is yours. Hi, dear Anirel. Here is your good name. Hello, dear Diana. Here is yours. Hello, dear Rayhan. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Faiz. Here is yours. Thank you so much for joining. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hello, dear Mart. Here is yours. Hi, dear Herdrum. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Yugani. Here is yours. Hello, dear Hareen. Here is your good name. Let's see who is next. Hi, dear Delha. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Roby. Here is yours. Hello, dear Sovereign. Here is your good name. Hello, dear Srijan. Here is yours. Hi, dear Dala. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Kyra. Here is yours. Hello, dear Vasif. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Isa. Here is yours. Thank you for joining, dear Isa. Hi, dear Bella. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Forex. Here is yours. Hello, dear Swastik. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Fart. Here is yours. Thank you so much for joining. Hello, dear GC. Here, Jessie. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Anam. Here is yours. Hello, dear Abby. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Eblon. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Arthur. Here is yours. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hi, dear Bard. It is a good name. Hello, dear Rick. Here is yours. What a unique name you have. Hello, dear Hannah. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Arohi. Here is yours. Hi, dear Alto. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Rajat. Here is yours. Hello, dear Alexandra. Here is your good name. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hi, dear Kushi. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Preet. Here is yours. Hi, dear Kasim. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Lucas. Here is yours. Hello, dear Hamma. Here is your good name. Oh, you're most welcome. Hi, dear Dilu. Here is yours. Hi dear Sehaj, here is your good name. Hi dear Sean, here is yours. Thank you for joining. Don't forget to press the bell icon. Hi dear Abiha, here is your good name. Hello dear Kaya, here is yours. Hi dear Pranjal, here is your good name. Hi dear Deepthi, here is yours. Hi dear Jory, here is your good name. Hello dear Yuri, here is yours. Hi dear Isabella, here is your good name. Hi dear Ayan, here is yours. Thank you so much for subscribing. Let's see who is next. Noor. Hi, dear Noor. It is a good name. Hi, dear Soham. Here is yours. Hello, dear Shaheen. Here is a beautiful name. Hi, dear Saika. Here is yours. Let's see who's gonna be the 30th liker. Hi, dear Paswan. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Alex. Here is yours. Hi, dear Delia. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Maisie. Here is yours. And hi, dear Bolu. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Rawan. Here is yours. Hello, dear Zainab. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Mahinur. Here is yours. Thank you so much for joining. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hi, dear Raju. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Melissa. Here is oh S. Melissa. No. Here is yours. Hi, dear Lara. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Aris. Here is yours. Hi, dear Rajveer. Here is your beautiful name. Hello, dear Iman. Here is yours. Hi, dear. Hi, welcome back. Amadullah, here is your beautiful name. Thank you so much for joining again. Here is yours. Double tap on your screens. Let's see who's gonna be the 30th liker. Hi, dear Lisa. Here is yours. Hi, I am Mihi. What a cute name you have, dear Mihi. Here is yours. Hi, dear Hazy. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Diana. Here is yours. Hello, dear Haya. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Samya. Here is yours. Thank you so much for joining. Hello, dear Fahad. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Prem. Here is yours. You're most welcome. Hello, dear Eris. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Sarah. Here is your good name. Hello, dear Deswa. Here is yours. What a unique name you have. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hi, dear Tamanna. Here is your beautiful name. Thank you so much for subscribing. Hi, dear. Let's see who is next. Hi, my second time join on your video. Oh, welcome back. How are you? Hi, dear Adila. Here is yours. Hello, dear Sabina. Here is your beautiful name. Hello, dear Tyla. Here is yours. Thank you for joining. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hi, dear Hood. Here is yours. Hi, dear Musa. Here is your good name. Hello, dear Alisa. Here is yours. Umeza or Unesa? Hello, dear Umesa or Uneza? Can you confirm, please? Here is yours. Hi, dear Jory. Here is a good name. I am good too, dear. Thank you so much for joining. Hi, dear Ursulan. Here is yours. Thanks for asking. Hi, dear Yina. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Basma. Here is yours. Thank you so much for joining, dear Basma. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hi, dear Emira. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Leon. Here is yours. Hi, dear Ariel. Here is your beautiful name. Ariel. I literally like this name. Hi, dear Advika. Here is yours. Hello, dear. Hi, Iman. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Leanne. Here is yours. Hi, dear All. Here is yours. Hello, dear Yes. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Aslan. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Joe. Here is yours. Hello, dear Isa. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Dior. Here is yours. Hi, dear Harper. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Jory. Here is yours. Hello, dear Amara. Here is a good name. With double M. Hi, dear Afzal. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Ayuka. Here is yours. Hello, dear Janvi. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Ninde. Here is yours. Hello, dear Yusuf. Here is your beautiful name. Thank you so much for joining, dear Yusuf. Hi, dear Harry. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Aman. Here is yours. Hello, dear Theo. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Siwa. Here is your good name. Thank you. You're most welcome. Hi, dear Yuna. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Harrison. Here is yours. Thank you so much for joining. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hello, dear Ibrahim. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Ahmed. Here is yours. Hi, dear Aslan. Here is your good name. Hello, dear Afra. Here is yours. Hello, dear Megan. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Sophia. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Yunchai. Here is yours. Thank you for joining. Hello, hi, dear Afra. Welcome back. Hi, dear Musa. Here is your good name. Hi, dear. Here is yours. Hello, dear Afran. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Ahil. Here is yours. Hello, dear Musfira. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Nilufer. Here is yours. Thank you so much for joining. Hi, dear Ines. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Sophia. Here is yours. Hi, dear Ariba. Here is your good name. Chuck. Hello, dear Chuck. Here is yours. Hi, dear Verania. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Shakistan. Now your turn. Hi, dear Isa. Here is yours. Hello, what's your name? Let me check. SOOKINNAJ and A. Okay, here you go. Hi, dear Shay. Here is yours. Thank you for joining. Hi, dear Hila. Here is yours. Hello, dear Ayush. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Leela. Here is your good name. Let's see who's gonna be the sixth seventh liker. Hi, dear Ahmed. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Marcel. Here is yours. Hello, dear Aleph. Here is your good name. Sonia. Hi dear Sonia. Here is your good name. Hi dear Iman. Here is yours. Hello dear Haya. Here is your good name. Hi dear Lucky. Here is yours. Hi dear Rosetta. Here is your good name. Hi dear Sana. Here is yours. Hello dear Eva. Here's a good name. Hi dear Arya. Here is your beautiful name. Hi dear Anha. Here is yours. Hi dear Amra, here is your beautiful name. Hi dear Hatsu, here is yours. Hi dear Muskan, here is your beautiful name. Hi dear Neha, here is yours. Hi dear Ruru, here is your good name. Hi dear Umer, here is yours. Let's see who's gonna be the 6-7 liker. Come on, double tap on your screens. Hi dear Efren, here is your good name. Hi dear Nancy, here is yours. Hello dear Emily, here is your good name. Hi dear Hakeem, here is yours. Hello dear, what's your name? Danny Joe. Okay. Hello, dear Danny Joe. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Rayham. Here is yours. Hello, dear Aditya. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Anju. Here is yours. Welcome back, dear Hawa. Hi, dear Rina. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Mika. Here is yours. Hello, dear Mukesh. Kate, okay. Hi, dear Mukesh. Here is your good name. Hello, dear Kate. Here is yours. Hi, dear Nafi. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Darsha or Darshana? Darshana, here is yours. Thank you for joining. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hi, dear Louie. Here is yours. Hi, Arsalan. Welcome back. It's spelled Daniel, but it's okay. Hello, dear Daniel. Here is yours. Hello, dear Arsalan. Here is your good name. Welcome back. How are you? After so many days, how's your life going, man? Hi, dear Hamza. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Shoaib. Here is yours. Hello, dear Rebel. Here is your beautiful name. Hello, dear Q. Q. Let me check the spelling. QINGXUEN. QINGXUEN. What a unique name you have, dear. Hi, dear Tula. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Elisha. Here is yours. Hi, dear Natalia and Elenka. Elenka, for you. I am fine, and you? Oh, so sad to hear. Hi, dear Mitra. Here is your good name. Hello, dear Imona. Here is yours. Hi, dear Lujan. Here is your beautiful name. Thank you, dear Rabel. Hi, dear Nawal. Here is yours. Hello, dear Aradhya. Here is your good name. Let's see who is next. Hi, dear Amelia. Here is yours. Hi, dear Ansh. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Sabruba. Here is yours. Hello, dear Julie. Here's a good name. Hi, dear Pile. Here is yours. Yeah, all good. Thank you so much for joining. Hi, dear Gaurav. Here is yours. Hello, dear Ari. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Leah. Here is yours. Double tap on your screens. Let's see who is next. Hi, dear Faiza. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear uh, Basma. Here is yours. Pulkita. Hello, dear Pulkita. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Aryan. Here is yours. Hello, dear Vivek. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Amy. Here is yours. Hi, dear Garima. Here is your beautiful name. Thank you so much for joining again. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Hemu. What a unique name you have. Here is yours. Hello, dear Ritvika. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Ozen. Here is yours. Hello, dear Evershri. Here is your good name. Hello, dear Ume. Here is yours. Hi, dear Annie. Here is yours. I'm doing good. How about you? Hello, dear Mosem. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Kirtika. Here is yours. Hello, dear Kimona. Here is your beautiful name. Hello, dear Ritu. Here is yours. Welcome back, Nawal. Please don't spam, dear. Your name is done. Done twice. Hi, dear Ayan. Here is yours. You didn't see, okay. Here is yours. Hi, dear Shawl. Here's a good name. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, dear Saville. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Harry. Here is yours. Hello, dear Amudha. Hey, Amudha. What a unique name you have. Here is yours. Hi, dear Sana. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Marush. Here is yours. Hi, dear Jiva. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Amri. Here is yours. Merhaba. Hi, dear Maria. Here is your good name. Let me fix this. Hi, dear So. Here is yours. Do like, yeah, no. Three more. Hello, dear Jay. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Nirmal. Here is yours. Bye. You're most welcome, dear. Take care. Have a good day. Hi, dear Yara. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Angel. Here is yours. And most welcome, dear. Hi, dear Adele. Here is a good name. Where is the subscribe button? Right there. Thank you, dear Ajay. Thank you. Hi, dear Mariam. Here is your beautiful name. Hello, dear Alia. Here is yours. Hi, dear Arva. Arva or Avia? Avia. What a beautiful name you have, dear Avia. Here is yours. Hello, dear Sri. Here's a good name. Hi, dear Vivi. Here is yours. Hello, dear Annie. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Archie. Here is yours. Hello, dear. Good morning. I am good. How about you? My name is Ishal. Hi, dear Swapna. Here is a good name. Hello, dear Vivi. Here is yours. He's calling Mama. What? Hi, dear Gary. Here is a good name. Hello, dear Renu. Here is yours. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. Don't forget to double tap on your screens and right there, the subscribe button. Don't forget to press the subscribe button. Hello, dear Diane. Here is yours. Hi, dear June. Here is your good name. Hello, dear Ronald. Here is yours. AD. Let's see who is next. Hi, dear Myra. Here is your good name. Yes. Hello, dear Kanak. Here is yours. Hi, dear Inaya. Here is your good name. We are literally stuck on 65, 66, 65, 66. So, can we make it 67? Yes, Abdul Rafi, I am. Hello, dear Dora. Here is yours. Joy Munshi. What a name. Here is yours. Hello, dear Luck. Here is a good name. How are you? By you? Thank God. Hi, dear Vidi. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Shiran. Here is yours. Hello, dear Janice. Here is your beautiful name. Hello, dear. Please don't write in caps, dear. I read now. Here is yours. Okay. Draw e-signatures. Okay. Don't spam, please. For you, dear. It's my handle. Let's see who is next. Hi, dear Journey. Here is yours. Pokemon card? Which type of card is it? Hi, dear Estrella. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Soha. Here is yours. Thank you so much for subscribing, dear Soha. I like you. Thank you so much. Pokemon is not cool. Hee. Amul. Oh my god. Hi, dear Hannah. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Maz. Here is yours. Our childhood favorite cartoons. Ben 10, Pokemon, Granny. Hi, dear Aya. Here is yours. Hello, dear Abida. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Tyler. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Nia. Here is yours. Oh my god. You are literally a Pokemon fan. Crazy fan you are. Hi, dear Eager. Here is yours. Let's see who is next. Hi, dear Emma. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Jax. Here is a good name. Hello, dear Paige. Here is yours. Hi, dear Alice. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Sanchi. Here is yours. Let's see who is next. Zaiba. Hello, dear Zaiba. Here is yours. Hi, dear Naja. Here is your good name. Welcome back. Here is yours. Hi, dear Aradhya. Here is your good name. Double tap on your screens and don't forget to press the subscribe button. Let's see who is next. I am your big fan, Didi. Please, my name is Priya. Thank you so much, dear Priya. Let me rewrite. I don't like that. Why? Here is yours. Wow. Wow, Salam. Kulsum. Hello, dear Kulsum. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Amina. Here is yours. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. Here is my name. It's my name. What's a good name? Hi, dear K and E. Hello, dear Javeria. Here is yours. Hi, dear Nadi. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Yuvi. Here is yours. Hello, dear Sozi. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Hamad. Here is yours. Thank you for joining. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hello, dear Maisha. Here is a good name. K and E. Okay, okay. You want a screenshot of this? Go for it now. You can watch my live later too. Okay, okay. Okay, take care, Arsalan. Thank you for joining again. Bye. Your name is done at 38. Double tap on your screen. Don't forget to like the live BNT. BNT. Hi, dear. Let's see who is next. Hello, dear. Okay, okay, Arsalan. I see your message. Hassan. Huh? Hassan. Yeah, I know you. Hassan. Welcome back. Here is yours. Hello, dear Miraj. Here is your good name. Hello, dear F and A. Here is yours. Hello, dear Zoya. How are you? Here is your good name. Hi, dear Lily. Here is yours. Hi, dear Steven. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you, dear Stephen. D and M. Here is yours. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hi, dear Sarah. Here is your good name. Yeah. Hello, dear Isha. Yours. Hi, dear Hammam. Huh? Double S, double A. Double S, double A. A. Double S, double A. Here is yours. Lagging. It's lagging. I don't know why, but it's lagging. Yes. It's okay. Now it's all good, I think. And oh, here is your no, mommy. It's lagging again. I literally. Hello, dear Abby. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Sana. How are you? Hello, dear Dhruvi. Here is your good name. Dhruvi. Here is yours. Hi, D and X. Hi, dear Sehan. Here is your good name. Hello, dear Sanabel. Yeah, nickname of Sanabel is Sana. Hi, dear Chloe. Here is yours. Hi- Hello, dear Mariam. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Raya. Here is yours. Hello, dear Misha. Here is your good name. Hello, dear Manbir. Here is yours. Thank you for joining. Hi, dear Chandni. Chandni, how are you, Chandi? Hello, dear Chandi. Here is your beautiful name. Hello, dear Snehal. Here is yours. Hi, dear Piper. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Hira. Here is yours. Hello, dear Lexi. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Alex. Here is yours. Hi, dear Betty. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Angela. Here is yours, Angela. No, Angela. Angela. Here is yours. Hi, dear Tashiana. Here is your good name. Hello, dear Rory. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Batul. Here is yours. Hi, dear Urvi. Here is your good name. Hello, dear Aldo. Here is yours. Hi, dear Noor. Here is a good name. Hello, dear Zoe. Here is your good name. Thank you for joining. Let's see who's gonna be the 100 liker and stay hydrated, guys, because it's too hot. And just give me 1 minute to drink water. Thank you so much for your patience. Hi, dear Barry. Here is your beautiful name. Hello, dear Param. Here is yours. Hi, dear Rashni. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Sylvia. Here is yours. Hello, dear Padma. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Shannon. Here is yours. Hello, dear Tanvir. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Anush. Here is yours. Hi, dear Adelena. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Monica. Here is yours. Hi, dear Lava. Here is yours. Hi, dear Pink. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Aishu. Here is yours. Thank you for subscribing. Let's see who is next. Thank you so much for subscribing. Don't forget to double tap on your screens. क्या नाम है आपका वंशु Hi, dear Vanshu. Here is yours. Hello, dear Evelyn. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Sana. Here is yours. Hi, dear Prapti. Here is your beautiful name. Hello, dear Rehab is done now. Hello, dear Liba, here is yours. Hello, dear Mustafa, here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Selena, here is yours. Hi, dear Mabisha, here is your good name. What a unique name you have, dear. Hi, dear Mariam, here is yours. Hello, dear Babu. क्या नाम है भाई Here is yours. Hello, dear Dolly. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Josefa. Here is yours. Hi, dear Zaniyiwe. Here is your unique name. Hi, dear Oleg. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Farhan. Here is yours. Hi, dear Thais. Here is your good name. We are stuck on 93. Double tap on your screens and don't forget to like and subscribe. Oh, Marco, welcome back. How are you? Here is yours. Hi, dear Sarah. Here is a beautiful name. Hello, dear Vika. Here is yours. Hi, dear Barry. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Ali. Here is yours. Hi, dear Cherry. Here is a good name. Don't use too much emojis, dear, please. Hi, dear guys. Here is yours. Hello, dear Samruti. Here is your good name. Oh, it's okay, dear Michael. Thank you so much for your precious time. Good day. Hi, dear Hira. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Aisha. Here is yours. Hello, dear Danilo. Here is your good name. Let's see who is next. Niwa. Hi, dear Niwa. Here is yours. Thank you for subscribing. Let's see who is next. Hi, dear Rushna. Here is your beautiful name. Hello, dear Askia. Here is yours. Askia. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Janisha. Here is yours. Hi, dear. Oh, you're most welcome. Amira, here is your good name. Hi, dear. See, low. Here is yours. Hi, dear Janisha. Okay, you want a screenshot. Here is yours. Announce my name. What's your good name? Sanket. Hello, dear Sanket. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Aisha. Here is yours. Hello, dear Ni. Oh my god. Hilary. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Yiching. Rushna. Yiching. Here is yours. Thank you for joining. Hi, dear Rehab. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Sarah. Here is yours. Thank you for subscribing. Hello, dear Salupa. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Farah. Here is yours. Don't forget to press the subscribe button there, guys. Let's see who's next. Hello, dear Hamta. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Priyam. Here is yours. Hi, dear Maham Sidra. Hello, dear Sidra. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Maham. Here is yours. Hello, dear Haya. Here is your beautiful name. Sarjana. Hello, dear Sarjana. Thank you so much for joining and thanks for your patience, dear. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Drishti. How are you? Here is your beautiful name. Thank you so much for joining. Oh, you're most welcome. Thank you. Hello, dear Jayden. Here is yours. Hi, dear Ruth. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Samira. Here is your beautiful name. Thank you so much for subscribing. Here is yours. Hi, dear Dawson. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Nusaiba. Nusaiba. Here is yours. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hi, dear Neha. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Fatima. Here is yours. Thank you so much for subscribing. Hello, dear Fudger. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Ona. Here is yours. Hi, dear Gagan. Here is your good name. Double tap on your screens and don't forget to press the subscribe button. And let me drink some water. Don't forget to press the bell icon. Thank you for your patience. Let's see who is next. Francie. Hi, dear Francie. Here is yours. Hello, dear Ferial. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Yemen. Here is yours. Hello, dear Piper. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Raka. Here is yours. I am good. How about you? Hi, dear Yunchai. This is for you, dear. Hi, dear Bat. Here is yours. Hi, dear Hamna. Here is your good name. Lala, I want to screenshot it. Okay. But you have a Mercy too, right? Thank you so much for joining, everyone. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hi, dear Alhaya. Just give me 1 second, cause Lala is taking screenshot. Hi, dear Aryan. How are you? Hello, dear Amna. Let me write your Amna. Here is a good name. Hello, dear. You want a screenshot as well? What's a good name? Hi, dear Say. Here is yours. Hi, dear Jannat. Here is your beautiful name. Hello, dear Maya. Here is yours. Hi, dear Maisha. Here is your good name. Hello, dear Megan. Here is yours. Hello, dear Ishan. Here is yours. Who wants a screenshot? Please tell me. Thank you for everything. You're most welcome. Hamna. Okay, Hamna. Here is yours. Thank you so much for joining, guys. Lots of love. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hi, Gagan. Okay, after this, just give her 1 second. She's taking a screenshot of her name. Hanna. Hi, dear Willie. How are you? Gagan. For you, dear Gagan. Here is yours. Confess. Brought to her, confess your love. Hi, dear Jeremy. Here is yours. Thank you so much for joining. Don't forget to double tap on your screens. Al Haya, what a beautiful name you have. Al Haya. After this. Hello, dear Al Haya. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Elma. Here is yours. Ayan. I'm not gonna write anyone's किसी की छेड़ नहीं लिखेंगे हम ईशान आगे जो भी आपने मेंशन किया है नाम बताइए नाम लिखेंगे किसी को तंग करने के लिए नहीं you understand stay positive man hi dear Jasmine here is yours hello dear Chloe here's a good name hi dear Oeku merhaba hello, dear Alicia. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Lucas. Willie. Oh, sorry, Willie. I forgot to write yours. I have read your name before, but here is yours. Hi, dear Aki. Here is yours. What? No, I'm not. You think? I know. Hi, dear Lucas. Here is yours. Hi, dear Rahi, here is a good name. Hi, dear Sarah. Here is a beautiful name. Hello, dear Dobby. Here is yours. Amal Bhai, are you here? Guys, don't forget to press the subscribe button. Let's see who is next. Hi, dear Arliss. Here is your good name. Hi, dear M. Here is yours. Hi, dear Gabby. Here is your beautiful name. Me, what's your good name? Hello, dear Sam. Here is yours. Hi, dear Parshia. Here is a beautiful name. Hello, dear Emirine, here is yours. Hello, dear Maya, here is a good name. Hi, dear Jaslyn, here is yours. तो मैंने भी खाला जी का समझ के कहा था उनको. Hi, dear Zad. सुनते हैं आप मुझे? मोज़न भाई? Can you hear me? Hi, dear Safari, here is yours. Hi, dear Jackie, here is a good name. Green Lava. Your name is Lava. I thought that you wrote lava, but you wrote lava, and then you wrote Lala, and lava and Lala. Oh god, so confusion. Too much confusion. Hi dear Tasmia, how are you? Double tap on your screens. Just give her 1 second. She is taking a screenshot. If it's done, please do let me know. Hi, dear Ella, how are you? Hello, dear Tommy. How are you? Dear Ima, here is your good name. Hi, dear Manik, here is yours. And I forgot what was the second name. Tommy. Hello, dear Tommy, here is yours. दिमाग मुझसे मिलता है. क्या ही बात बोली, इस बात में मुझे बहुत हंसी आ रही है मौसम भाई. Hi dear, my name is your. दिल की सुननी चाहिए है ना. Hi dear Sanjay, here is yours. Hello dear Mary, here is your good name. मैंने सोचा था मैं पूरा फोकस करके लिखूंगी और कोई बात नहीं करूंगी, खास तौर पे आपसे मौसम भाई. फिर भी आपने मेरी हिंदी बाहर निकलवा दी है. Hi dear Erin, here is yours. Hello dear Kelly, it is a good name. Hi dear Health, here is yours. Plebada. Okay, ¿cómo estás? Gracias. Hello dear Everlay, here is a good name. Let's see who's gonna be the 127th liker. Oh, what are you saying? And Ayan, I have told you before that I am gonna write anyone's, like anything to tease anyone. ईशान सिर्फ आपके फ्रेंड का नाम थोड़ी है ना, और भी तो कितने सारे ईशान हैं. तो अगर हम एक नाम के साथ ऐसे लिखेंगे तो फिर अगर किसी दूसरे ईशान को बुरा लगा तो. Hi dear Isha, here is yours. Hello dear Rita, here's a good name. Give respect and take respect. Hi dear Zoe, here is yours. तो हमें एक ईशान की रिस्पेक्ट करनी चाहिए और बाकी सब की भी करनी चाहिए ना. तो आपके फ्रेंड के साथ आपका जो भी मजाक है, बट हम यहाँ पे तो नहीं लिख सकते ना एक पूरी दुनिया के सामने. Hi, welcome back. Whoa, she loves again. Guys, remember me? Yeah, I do. How are you? Here is a good name, dear. Can I call you Ria? Hi, dear. Very good, very good. You, I'm good too. Thank you so much for asking, dear. Have a good day. Let me read the comment. क्या मासी से चुनना है पर क्या? Thank you. Hi, dear Maja. Here is a good name. Hello, dear Shakira. Here is your Zainab. Merhaba. Nasılsın? İncelara hoş geldiniz. İyi günler. Hi dear Arthur, here is yours. Hello dear Shraddha, here is your beautiful name. What language do you speak? I can speak Urdu, Hindi, bit of English, bit of Turkey, and I do know about something Spanish. Just 2 phrases. That's crazy. Okay, let me write Ariha. Hello, dear Ariha. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Anfal. Here is yours. Hello, dear Bill. Wow, what a name. Here is yours. Hi, dear Husna. Here is your beautiful name. Teşekkür ederim. Hi, dear Martin. Here is yours. A bit of turkey, not too much. Hello, dear Tessa. Here is yours. Hi, dear Martin. Here is your good name. Hello, dear Salar. Here is yours. Hi, dear Angel. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Maya. No. Maya, and what was the second name? Vladimir. Here is yours. Thank you so much for joining. Hi, dear Elena. Here is yours. I'm not from Turkey. Are you literally going? Hi, dear Sam. Here is yours. Thank you so much for joining. Hi, dear Bilal. Here is a good name. Malaika. Hello, dear Malaika. Here is your good name. Hi, dear Tehzeeb. Here is yours. Hello, dear Sanvi. Here is your beautiful name. Hello, dear. Let me check. What is your name? Akshara. Here is yours. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. Don't forget to. Do you speak Russian? No, I can't. No, I don't. Sorry. Hello, dear Shehnaz. Here is yours. Are you from Russia? Hi, dear Dariana. Here is yours. Hello, dear Farah. Here is your good name. Hello, dear Giselle. Here is yours. Hi, dear Fatima. Here is your beautiful name. Hello, dear Livia. Here is yours. Thank you so much for joining. Don't forget to double tap on your screens, and there is a subscribe button waiting for your finger press. Hello, dear Hano. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Sammy. Here is yours. Hi, dear Trisha. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, Amira. Thank you so much for those incredibly kind words. What's your good name, dear Amira? Here is yours. Thank you so much for joining. Hi, dear Ruxar. Here is your good name. Hello, dear 67. Here is yours. Hi, dear Lenny. Here is your good name. Oh, Damien. Who's following? Oh, someone is following my Damien. My real name is Damien. Wow. cool name you have, dear Damien. Welcome! Don't forget to double tap on your screens. Hello, dear Asia. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Dharuj. Here is yours. Double tap on your screens and don't forget to press the subscribe button. You're most welcome. Hi, dear Elisa. Here is yours. Hi, dear Layla. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Dana. Here is yours. Let's write Stray Kids for you. Hi, dear Josefa. How are you? Here is your good name. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you. You're most welcome. Hi, dear Vanessa. Here is yours. It is a good name. How are you? After so many days. Hey, dear Adam. Here is your beautiful name. Hi, dear Lion. Here is yours. Hello, dear Amna. Here is your beautiful name. You are the cutest, dear Amna. Thanks for joining. It's okay after this. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hi, welcome. I forgot what was about to write. Helix from Stray Kids. Hi, dear Sunny. How are you? Here is your good name. Hi, dear Rubina. Here is yours. Hello, dear Kylie. Here is your beautiful name. Hello, dear Haram. Here is yours. Thank you for joining, dear Haram. Cheyenne. Hi, dear Cheyenne. Here is a good name. Yeah, I do have cat and two and a pair of parrots in hyphen. Here is yours. Hello, dear Cece. Thank you for subscribing. Here is your good name. What a cool name you have, dear Cece. Hi, dear Kinga. Here is yours. Hello, dear Bella. Here is a good name. Lisa. Okay. Hi, dear Lisa. Here is yours. Hi, dear Dalika. Here is a good name. Hi, dear Cat Day. Here is yours. Double tap on your screens. Oh, what's your name? I'm back and your map lost. You will be distracting. No, I'm not gonna read your comments. Hi, dear Naomi. Here is yours. Hi, dear Daniela. Here is your beautiful name. What was your name? Who was a screenshot for her name? Mention me. Hi, dear Jane. Here is yours. Double tap on your screens and don't forget to press the subscribe button. Cheyenne. Okay, Cheyenne. Now it's time for the screenshot and come on, take it now. You can watch my live later too. Your name is done at 1 hour and 14 minutes of the live. Don't forget to double tap on your screen, guys. We are literally stuck on 139. Can we make it 145? Yeah, or maybe 7. Sarah, today is my birthday. Happy birthday, dear Sarah. Happy birthday, dear Sarah. Done. Here is your good name. May you live long and spend a wonderful life. Hi, dear Livia, here is yours. Hi, dear Abru, here is your good name. Hi, dear Safuwa, here is yours. Aruk, why not? Here is yours. Thank you, dear. This is for you. Hi, dear Joplin, how are you? Here is a good name. Thank you so much for joining. Oh, you're most welcome. Hi, dear Tia. Here is your good name. Hello, dear Amish. Here is yours. Hello, dear Elena. Here is your good name. Oh my god. I want to create a channel type and tell me what is yourself about your things and is what? I can't understand your question. Yes, this is the original sand and this is the original human and this is the brush. And what other thing you wanna ask? Hi dear Aisha, here is yours. Hello dear Nana, here is your good name. Hi dear Aisha, here is yours. Hello dear Echo, here is yours. T-Son-Ka. Hello dear T-Son-Ka, here is yours. Hello dear Aleph, here is your beautiful name. Thanks, you're most welcome. Stranger Things. For you, dear. Thank you for joining. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hi, Robia Bano. Okay, here is yours. Where is Bano? I didn't see her comment. Hi, dear Yasin. Here is yours. Hello, dear Sakshi. Here is your good name. Yeah. No, I don't think so, Muslim Bhai. Hello, dear Hasnan. Because God created us in pairs. मिल ही जाएगा कभी ना कभी हमको भी आपको तो मिल ही जाएगा. Hi, dear Yusuf. Here is yours. आपका पेड़ भी मिलेगा ना सबको मिलता है. Hi, dear Mayank. Mayank? No, Mayak. Here is yours. What a unique name you have. Guys, double tap on your screens and don't forget to press the subscribe button. Cecil, you want a screenshot too? Walaikum assalam. Khadija, welcome back. Manu and Abhi. Manu and Abhi. Thank you for subscribing. Here is yours. Thank you so much for subscribing and liking. Turkan. Hello, dear Turkan. How are you? Here is your good name. Guys, double tap on your screens and don't forget to press the subscribe button. Hi, dear Safi. Yeah, here is your beautiful name. Hana? सही बात है, सिंगल लाइफ के अपने मजे हैं भाई. Hi dear Eva, here is yours. Oh, who is sad? Why are you so sad, dear? Shakti. Uh, what is the spelling? Shakti Sinji. Uh, okay. Let's write for you. Shakti Sinji. What a name you have. Okay, go for it. Hello, how are you doing? Please, can you write Shams? Welcome back, Shams. Why not? Here is your beautiful name. Thank you so much for joining. Who's saying Virat Kohli? Kohli the legend? Guys, double tap on your screens. And don't forget to press the subscribe button. Madhav. Hello, dear Madhav. How are you? Here is yours. Hi dear Madhu. Madhu में एक डी आता है. Oh sorry. Here is your good name. Hello dear Kevin. Kevin and Jay. Here is yours. Hello dear Bruna. Here is your good name. Don't forget to press the subscribe button, guys. Hi dear Turk. Merhaba, nasılsın? İnsanlara hoş geldiniz. İyi günler. Ritvik Kavya. Ritvik Kavya. Here is yours. Hi dear Yuri. Here is a good name. Hi dear Ankit. Here is yours. We are stuck on 148. Can we make it 150 at least? Two more. Hi, dear Evavia. Here is yours. And now it's time to end the stream. Hi, dear Maylan. Here is a good name. And don't forget to press the subscribe button, guys. Don't forget to press the bell icon though, if you want to get notified. Murtaza, why are you so sad? Cheyenne, don't spam man, please. No, I कोई classes नहीं देती मैं. Hi dear Amber, here is yours. Hi dear Amu, here is your beautiful name. And looking for the last name for this stream, which is gonna be the thumbnail for the next stream. हाँ जी, यही बात है ना मुझे भाई, देख लें मुझे और आपको ना खदीजा जी पूछती हैं, ना हाजिक भाई, ना सिबका जी. सिबका जी मुझे पूछ लेती हैं, आपको वो वैसे भी कम आ रही हैं आजकल, और ना ही अमू भाई कभी कभी. Kyla. Hello dear Kyla, here is yours. Murtaza. Okay, and our last name for this stream is, hi dear Murtaza, here is yours. Advik ho gaya. Pragyan. Pragyan is our last name for this stream and thumbnail for the next stream. Don't forget to double tap on your screens. Don't forget to press the subscribe button there. Love you all. Love you all. Love you all. बस इस यही हाल है, यही हमारी अकेली ज़िंदगी है, देख लो. चलिए चलते हैं हम लोग. बहुत सारा ख्याल रखिएगा. Take care. Bye bye guys. I'll be back at the evening. अद्विक नहीं लिखा, अद्विक मैंने लिखा था, मुझे लगा मैंने लिख लिया है। चले आपका लिखते जाते हैं, अद्विक जी। Thank you so much for joining, everyone. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye. Take care.